everybody. It's Suzanne A. Wells, and welcome to another episode of eBay the Right Way. This is episode number 30. Today's date is October 13th, 2021, and we have an eBay chat with Olivia Poole, who some of you may recognize from the eBay $100 supersize sales threads on my Facebook group and on YouTube. And she has some very helpful information to share about some specific items that she looks for and that have sold for over $100 and more. So let's go ahead and get into the chat with Olivia. Okay, we have Olivia Poole, who is going to share some of her magical secrets, maybe, about selling on eBay. She is a frequent poster on the $100 supersize sales threads. So she obviously knows what she's doing. So say hello to everybody.
Hey, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. I love having the opportunity to talk about things that we all enjoy, and I'm just really looking forward to the conversation.
Great. Do you want to share your location?
Yeah, so I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee. So kind of a mid-sized city, which I think is encouraging for a lot of people because I think a lot of people have a perception that you've got to be in like Chicago or New York or LA to do really well with this. But yeah, I'm in a relatively small, very mid-sized city. And yeah.
Did you go to University of Tennessee?
So I actually did not. So we're definitely a university city, and I've got some strong roots. For better or worse, I do root for the University of Tennessee, which has been a pretty painful experience. But I actually went to a small non-denominational Bible school in like the Chattanooga area, Dayton, Tennessee, which blink and you'll miss it.
Are you kidding
Very
me?
Small city.
We lived in Chattanooga for 6 years, from 94 to 2000. And my ex-husband's family is all Dayton, Tennessee.
Are you serious? What a small world.
Yeah,
because that is one of those cities so small they roll up the sidewalks at 6.
I know. And so his grandmother was one of 13 children. So we would go to family reunions, and I am quite familiar with Dayton and surrounding areas.
Oh my gosh.
But I was like, every time we'd have these family reunions, it's like, I don't remember who's who. There were like 3 sets of twins, and it was just.
Well, if you want to get to 13 kids, that's definitely the fastest way to do it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So that's interesting that,
yes,
that you have roots.
I know
there.
that area very well.
What college did you go to?
Bryan College. So it's just, nestled up on a hill there in Dayton. It's funny that which the population of that city is very small. It's so small that when students come back, the Walmart puts up a banner because it's a big deal. Yeah. So that taught me I didn't want to do super small town living. I'm not cut out for that. I am a mid-city girl for sure.
Yeah. So what kind of work do you do? Because you work full time and do eBay part time.
I sure do. Yeah. So 40 hours a week, I am a supply chain manager. So I'm booking trucks and cutting purchase orders and making sure stuff ships on time. So not entirely incongruous with what I do on eBay, honestly. But yeah, so that's what I do full time. And I come home on my lunch breaks and I ship boxes for eBay stuff.
You do supply chain in a different way.
Exactly.
Oh, that's great.
Nightgowns instead of chemicals, which is what I sell the rest of the time.
Have you seen a decrease in all of your, shipping, the volume of what you're shipping with the COVID situation?
So we were really fortunate. We're in chemical blending and manufacturing. So we actually, we had a gangbuster year during COVID because, we sold a lot of components for sanitizers, which the world didn't have enough of.
Right.
So we were really fortunate in that we stayed really, really, I was not bored during lockdown. Like I was working from home, but I was working like 60 hours a week. So I've been very fortunate that I've stayed very busy in my full-time job, even during COVID. So yeah, fortunately we did not, but I know a lot of people did.
And so you are married, no kids?
I'm actually not married, so I
Okay.
can just do whatever I want on my weekends, which is usually haunt thrift stores.
Well, I thought, my gosh, a smart girl like you, somebody would have snapped you up.
Well, you know what? I mean, I'm taking applications, so you know.
Yeah, so am I. It's just hard to find the right candidate.
This is very true. That's right. That's right. Selectively screening applicants.
That's right. They got to meet a lot of criteria for me.
Yes.
So just like when I choose
ya.
inventory to sell, I'm very
That's right.
picky.
That's right. That's right. I'm not messing around with the low margin stuff.
That's right. So how did you even get started with eBay?
Yeah. So it's kind of a meandering journey. Ironically, so I grew up in a family of four, and so we are basically we're a total of about 6 years apart between the four of us. And my youngest brother, when he was 10, actually, he started randomly like drop shipping stuff on eBay. So he'd like find something that Walmart sold, and he was like drop shipping it, making like $12 a unit as a 10-year-old.
Wow.
So yeah, he was one of those. And we grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My dad has a business, and so my dad actually had two businesses, one of which we were kind of involved with. We bought and resold houses, which was great during the financial crisis. Everybody, fantastic. You learned you can't get burned being your own boss.
Absolutely.
Yep. We learned to hustle when we were young, and we really enjoyed, all of us, just that journey. So my brother was really entrepreneurial even as a child. So he was drop shipping stuff, and he started noticing when all of these new video game systems launched, because he was really into video games. He's a computer programmer now. He started seeing that people were like pre-selling these systems that they had like commitments for like $300 and $400 over retail. So he went to my dad and was like, he was looking for an investor. So he said, I can sell this for, $400 more than the retail price, but he didn't have a credit card, so he didn't have much of a way to do it. So my whole family, we decided we were all going to get in on it. So we would like all over town. One of us would be at a Best Buy, and one of us would be at a Walmart, mom, dad, whole crew. And so we started like doing that to make a little extra Christmas money, things like that, where we saw opportunities. So that was kind of my initial entry into eBay, and my dad did a lot of that because he was.
Now, when was that? How many years ago was that?
Oh, it was a long time ago. So I would probably been 15 or 16 when we first started doing that. So we were 10 to 16 as kids. And so we did a little of that in college too. Me and my sister, for Christmas money, we were running down to the Dayton Walmart to buy up a couple of weeks.
That was before everybody figured it out.
Yep.
You were an early adopter of retail arbitrage and flipping those things.
We were.
Excellent.
Which was really, really fun, because we definitely, we were very fortunate. We never wanted for anything as kids, but we were not a super affluent family. Mm-hmm. So it was just a cool way to say, if you want something, if you want a couple $100 to be able to spend at Christmas, go out there and hustle. Like, what's a way you can do it? Which I think is a really fantastic lesson. It really changed my mindset, even having that as a child. So that was kind of my early entry into it. And I didn't have a lot of time for it in college. And after I got out of school, I ended up working a job where I was on the road for half a year. But then when I was home, I didn't really have work responsibilities. So I had a whole lot of free time. And I also, at this point, was transitioning out of my parents' home into an apartment. So I had a lot of free time and not a lot of money. And I think anybody who's ever bought their first apartment knows that they're just trying to do it on the cheap. You're looking for anything and everything that you need as cheap as possible, which sent me a lot of times into thrift stores. And I started just noticing these things that were marked really cheap that looked really expensive. And at this point, I didn't even know that eBay had a function where you could see what sold, like what had sold at what price. So I'm just looking at open listings. So I kind of started dabbling again there, and I got really addicted to it because I had all this free time. So that first year I made a lot of mistakes. Like I think I probably sold like half of the stuff at a loss because I had no idea like really, what all the tools were. So I think that first year I maybe did like $1,200 in sales and maybe made like $600. But ironically, I was thrilled. Like it was $600 I didn't have before. And it was just something that was so fun. It didn't feel like work. And so that started, I guess, when I was like, 7 or 8 years ago is when I started doing that. And I've kind of just been ramping up since then and learning how to really do it well rather than to kind of just wander my way through, which was definitely what I was doing there at the beginning when I started. But yeah, it's just been such a blast. I really have enjoyed it.
So does your brother still sell?
So he, every once in a while, like random Christmases, we'll figure out something that we just want to do. And now it's great because both of us are not super poor. So we can do other things like use that money to help our community or things like that. But yeah, every once in a while, find a good opportunity, we do. He doesn't very much because now he's a big computer programmer. So, he, when you can bill it, I don't know, whatever his hourly rate is, it's not as interesting anymore.
Well, and he sounds a lot like my son because when my son was 10, 11, he's 25 now, but he was all into those medieval games. RuneScape was one of them.
Yep.
Online that you play online with other people around the world and you accumulate like treasures and stuff. And so he would just play that all the time. And then, he started saying, Mom, I got somebody who needs to send money to PayPal. Can we use your PayPal account? And I'm like, what are you doing up there in your room? Like what could an 10, 11-year-old be doing that they need PayPal for? And I'm like,
yeah.
Oh my God, is he like one of these miniature hackers that's, doing something crazy? And then he explained, he's like, no, I'm building these RuneScape accounts and selling them to like adults. Like, because they wanted to have an account that was already built and, had
established.
Established and these treasures built up. And he would he would play it for a week and build it up and sell it for $100. And I thought, this kid is going to go far. And
it's so true.
he's making money out of nothing. And so he's a computer guy now. He's a help desk guy now. So it's like, that's just crazy what people come up with. But it's like, even as kids, they can see these opportunities, he contacted me a couple of months ago when, in the middle of COVID where computer parts were hard to get. Yeah. And, he was like, hey, I've got this graphics card or something. I bought it for $100 and they're selling for $400. Can you sell it on eBay for me? And before I could even get it listed, he found somebody to sell it to. And, it was just, it's just like some people just see it. And, and it's nothing that you learn, you just see it. And that's not like what's going on in your family.
Yeah. And I think just like, I think it just makes such a difference if you have this mindset that you really can that there's just there's a lot of opportunity out there. And just having that sense that it's about going out and finding where you fit into a world that has so many opportunities. Like just the things that the internet has allowed us to do are just really unbelievable.
And what's accessible to you. And some people see like the low hanging fruit that's accessible and some people don't see it. And it's like, but it's all around you. It's just, you just have to know what to look for. So, do you specialize in any particular category?
Yeah. So I definitely have things that I sell more of. I think the majority of what I sell. So I live in a relatively small home. So anytime I'm looking at an opportunity, I'm mindful of not just what I can make on it, but like this kind of the storage cost because I have limited storage space. So there's definitely been items that I've turned down because I'm like, I could definitely make some money on this, but it's going to sit and it's going to be big. So I tend to do more with things that are easily stored. So I do a lot of clothing. So I've loved doing vintage. So I've kind of learned to niche there in vintage. I've also loved doing I do quite a bit of lingerie. which is almost always massively underpriced when you find the right thing. It is mind blowing that any nightgown is $3.99, no matter what it is.
But what's the thrift store going to do? They can't sell it for $100.
Absolutely not. And it's also great because I think honestly, those items don't get analyzed the way that a lot of things do. I think people have kind of complained about how a lot of stores mark items, and I understand that because we definitely have a chain here in town that's pretty massively overpriced. But they do not blink twice at a pajama set. They just don't. They $2.99 and throw it on the shelf.
Is it the person pricing it, or is it what sells in that store? They know they can mark up the handbags and they're going to sell. I was at Goodwill yesterday, and I went to one I rarely go to because ours have just not been well stocked for the past 3 to 6 months. It's been very sparse. And I went to this one and I was like, oh my God, this place is jam packed. I was in there for 4 hours. I was like, I'm getting a bunch of stuff because I have not seen this in so long. It was like being at an amusement park. I was having so much fun. But they had the handbags from Target that weren't even leather, priced at $25. And I'm what's that all about?
I bought that bag new for $19.99.
Right. Yeah. So you wonder what that store knows they can get for certain items, and then what they can't get. And pajamas and lingerie and bras, all that is usually not marked. Who's going to pay $20 for a bra at a Goodwill?
And which entirely makes sense. That's what I'd do too if I were them. But so those usually tend to there's a lot of opportunities there. And I tend to do a fair bit of that. What I just love about clothes is, I can get $2,000 worth of inventory into a little bin that I can just store in my garage really easily. Mm-hmm. So I do a lot of clothes. I also just think that's fun. I, for a couple of years, I managed I actually managed a bridal store for 2 years. So I've kind of got a bit of a background in fashion and retailing. So I know.
Bridal lingerie. That stuff's not cheap.
Yeah. So with that background, it's easy for me to, I know the peplum top, it's a drop waist, it's a whatever. So because I'm familiar with that also makes it a lot easier for me to sell that category well. And so another niche that I have and enjoy, which I have to be selected because of storage, but is small appliances. Because what I love about small appliances is that there's almost no way to go wrong. I know a lot of people have had some hesitation, or I see people saying, "Oh, I could never sell that. I don't know if it works. I don't know what blah 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 blah." What I really love about that is it's so easy to research. You flip the thing over, you look at the bottom. What's the model number? What's the manufacturer? You can't always do that with a vintage sweater. It may be unbranded. It may have a brand, but you can never find that exact sweater, even if it's been sold before, because you're just not using the right search terms. So sometimes the comping of clothing can get a little bit harder, but comping small appliances is so easy. So it's, you can rapid fire through this Philips, coffee pot model SC045. You know immediately whether those comps look good. And I know a lot of people have hesitation about checking functionality, but my observation has been that you can part out a small appliance that has good comps for almost as much money as a working unit. So I don't ever worry about, what if this unit doesn't work? Because I know that the carafe on its own is going to sell for $40. The water tank will sell for another $40. The lid will sell for $15.
Let me pick your brain and ask you, what do you look for in small appliances? Yeah. What have been your most successful sales?
Yeah. So I honestly sell a lot of coffee pots. I recently had one that I had put in the $100 find thread.
The Porsche one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So what drew me to this? So what I tend to look at when I'm just scanning, I say, what's weird? If there's anything on a shelf, I'm like, I have no clue what that is. That's what I'm going to go to first. Mm-hmm. Flip it over, see what the model number is, search it. What attracted me to that exact model, and I'll background for people who may not have seen that particular thread. It was a coffee pot that was made by Bosch. I'm not actually sure how you pronounce it. And it looks like something from like a Jetsons movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's got like these 2 silver barrels. It's really sleek lines. It's when I saw it up there, I was like, that is really, really interesting. You couldn't even,
Mm-hmm.
like, it was so sleek, you couldn't even identify it as a coffee pot straight away. And then on the side of it, it said made for Porsche. So then I was like, oh, this is big money. Like
Oh
anything
yeah, when you
you
see
made
that
for Porsche.
BMW or Mercedes logo on
Yep.
anything or Porsche, it's like, oh, what
Yeah.
is that?
In a coffee pot made for Porsche. Like, what
That
even is
is
that?
interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, so it's anything that just is, I can't even identify it just by glancing. That's going to be a first go. A second thing is with coffee pots, anything that says it also grinds. So like a grind and brew coffee pot, any coffee pot with a grinding functionality tends to be a higher dollar item for me. And so, yeah, just highly specialized things. Like twice I've found basically water filter units that were really high dollar. And again, looking at them at a glance, I would have had no clue what they were. So that just sort of uniqueness factor tends to be one of those easy pegs for me that looks like something that's probably big dollar.
Yeah, because the weirder the better on eBay,
Uh-huh.
and
Mm-hmm.
the less there is of something, the more it's worth. So it's when you see 20 Mr. Coffee makers every time you go somewhere, it's like, no, I keep seeing that, so that's not special.
Yep.
You want to be like, oh wait, what is that?
Uh-huh. Another thing that I forgot about too is often color. So like to start, if something's like a chrome or a stainless steel, okay, so that's more likely to be something that's going to be a higher dollar, or if something's a really unique color. So like a Keurig that's like a jade color that I've never seen
Right,
before.
the bright colors, yeah.
Exactly. And even those two, they're going to be easier to part out because if you accidentally dropped the lid for that Keurig's water reservoir and it cracked, well, that's going to be harder to replace because
Yeah, those
it's a weird
those
color.
Keurigs are getting cheaper and cheaper because those water tanks crack.
They do.
And people are like, oh, and then you go try to buy one online, like on a retail site, and they're like $40.
They are. It's actually funny. I had at least once where I figured out I could actually sell the water reservoir better than I could sell the whole unit for this Keurig I found for like $2 at a garage sale, which actually makes a lot of sense because the shipping gets so expensive with the weight of the full unit. And often people don't need the full unit. They're literally buying it for parts. And so the water reservoir is really light. You can ship that really inexpensively. And oftentimes that's most of what people were looking for to start. So things like that you just don't think about. Sometimes it's like those items. And it's also honestly a lot easier to ship a water reservoir than a whole Keurig. And I know that's a lot of people's one of their hesitations as well with selling small appliances, like, oh, it's so hard to ship, which is really nonsense because I've literally never had a coffee pot or I've broken they're small appliances tend to be pretty durable. But just kind of thinking outside the box on that really gave me a lot of confidence about selling those items because they're just not as scary as they seem. Mm-hmm. And if you're buying right, it's really hard to lose on them, honestly.
Yeah. And when you think about, my business is going towards small items, but hey, I found a full length camel hair coat yesterday and I wasn't leaving that behind, but
oh yeah. Yeah.
But like you want to think what is things that are cheap to ship from the buyer's perspective, because I'm in Atlanta and I sell a lot of things to California, which you wouldn't
I do
think,
too. Texas,
but
California.
They're the small things like the eyeglasses and gloves and little things because it's cheap for them to, this shipping on their end is cheap. So it's not just, oh, I want to keep the shipping down because we're charged fees on shipping and all that stuff.
Which is just
but
silly. Like,
you got to think of it as a buyer, they're more likely to buy parts and small items because overall the purchase is going to be cheaper for them.
Yeah, which I mean, as a consumer, that's what I want too. Like, I certainly look at what that cost is going to be. So, I mean, I get that. And that's half of it is if you're thinking like a buyer. What would I be willing to pay for this coffee pot? What would I be willing to pay to ship this coffee pot? Like, not going to pay $25 for the pot and $27 for shipping. Like, of course, like that's probably not going to appeal. So yeah.
So how many items do you have in your store?
So on average, I usually have around 200 items listed, plus or minus a bit. Yeah. So that's kind of my sweet spot. And obviously as I've gone on and I buy a lot more selectively now than I used to. But at that level with the kind of buying I do, I basically have a sale a day, which is a really comfortable kind of turn spot for me. I'm happy with the inventory levels I keep and the kind of extra cash that I'm able to generate. So yeah.
Do you keep records? Do you know like what your average profit per item is and stuff like that?
So my average profit per item, that I just haven't calculated as much because I'm more like concerned about tax records and that sort of thing. I know what like I did in sales last year and what I profited. But honestly, on a per item basis, I'm not sure of, honestly.
Okay. Well, do you know what you profit per month? Just to give some perspective on what can be done with just 200 items, because there's a lot of sellers that have thousands of items and not everybody can do that or wants to do that.
Yeah. So last year, which I think for all of us was a weird year because it was COVID, but I was really pleased. Again, I do this on the weekends. So I go out and shop maybe 4 or 5 hours a weekend, sometimes more if I have a weird weekend, but then there's weekends I'm completely busy and I can't at all. And I work a full-time job. So like last year on average, I had about $800 of profit a month on just a couple hours of fun over a weekend and shipping over my lunch breaks, which personally I was really happy with. I think about
that's almost, $10,000 a year in your pocket.
Yeah.
Doing this part time, and that can pay for a lot of things. Yeah.
It does. And like, I think about when I was in college, I used to work a whole summer at a part-time job and make what I make in a month doing something that honestly, it's like, it feels to me like if someone told you, hey, over your weekend, you could walk around these stores and $100 could hit you on the head. Like, who wouldn't do that? I mean, genuinely, it is just so fun. Like I wake up at 7 on a Saturday, excited, pardon me, excited to go into thrift stores because it's just like treasure hunting. So the money is almost just a metric of success. Like I'm so glad to have the money, but almost the challenge of it is as fun as anything to me to just go in and find something unexpected and undervalued and put it into the hands of somebody who's really excited about it. Like that's the part of it that is just so, that's what makes me keep doing it. It's genuinely so fun.
Yeah, we are redistribution specialists.
Exactly. And I mean, it's so true.
Taking this thing from over here and putting it over there and making money doing it.
Yes. So I've been really pleased with, and I mean, I went from the first year that I did it, like I said, I think I did about $1,200 in sales and maybe made $500. And I think last year I had like $15,000 in sales and made about $8,000, something like that. And honestly, I don't spend a lot more time on it than I used to. I'm just buying a lot more selectively than I used to, and having a knowledge base that I didn't used to, and not passing up things that are big money that I never would have known were big money until I got more education.
Right.
So, yeah.
So it's funny because you start this off and you feel like you know some things. And like, oh, I know what to look for because, you had your specialty in the bridal world, knowing that product line and different things. And then you get into it and you start learning more. And the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know.
Oh, absolutely. So true.
And it's like some people, call me an expert because I've been doing it for so long. And it's like, no, I'm not. There's so much I don't know. And I'm just like picking 1 or 2 or 3 categories a year. Like I am going to start delving into golf clubs because I see them everywhere. And there's probably 8 golf courses in my county alone. And it's like, it's just time for me to start looking at that because they're right in front of me. And I've always been intimidated because I don't like golf. I don't like watching golf. I don't know anything about it, but that's okay. I mean, I can learn about that like I've learned about everything else. So,
absolutely.
But you look at all these categories and it's like, there's so much in here I don't know.
Oh, yeah. And that's the thing is I used to go into a thrift store and in about an hour, I felt like I'd seen everything there was to see. And now I can go in and in 4 hours, I'm like, I'm sure there's still money right all around me that there's just more and more things as you learn deeper, the number of things that you realize you would have just never looked twice at that are such big money categories. That's what I love about it. It's just so dynamic. It always keeps you learning and thinking and just seeing all of the weird things that the world has. That's one of the funnest things. It's just all the things that exist. It's like a museum of humanity.
Right.
It's
like
really
what
fun.
is this thing and what was it used for? And would somebody want that? So you specialize in lingerie, vintage clothing, small electronics. What else do you do?
So I'm trying to think of some of the other things. Like last year I had a really good pull on, I located 22 pieces from like a vintage like Bible Village nativity set. So when I find things like that, I'll go into it. So collectibles, I do quite a bit of collectibles. I'll do some handbags. I'm pretty selective about handbags because, like you said, in most situations, the handbags in my area that are actually worth anything are pretty overpriced. But like when I go to an estate sale or something and they've got like vintage handbags, things like that. Like I found a couple of like alligator purses before that were vintage that I've sold well. That nativity village that I found, it was kind of interesting. And I think for me as a seller was a lesson. That particular thrift store I'd been going to for a little over a year. And when I went in to start, you should always treat people well because that is what should happen. But I just started kind of building relationships with people there because it was a small enough store that they had a pretty consistent staff. So I knew the names of the people and I had gotten to know people pretty well. And the way that this particular store is set up, they have like a warehouse where they have a lot of their sellable merchandise on the floor. And then they have like curtains up and they have really tall racks behind them. And that's where they have merchandise that they haven't processed yet. So I was just tooling around the floor, minding my own business. And on the top of the rack, I saw just stacks of what I knew was some sort of like nativity village. And so I knew all these people. So I just went to one of them and said, hey, what are the odds that you would just sell me all of those? And like, I'm not even going to like pick through them. I'll just take them off your hand. You won't even have to tell me a price for each one of them. Some of them are small, some of them are big. Just give me a price. What would you take for them? And so they ended up selling them to me for like each one was $7 a piece. And I had 3 of those that sold for over $100.
Wow.
Which again, it's just, if you treat people the way you should treat people and you are kind and you take the time to talk to the people who are checking you out at these thrift stores, it may be that when you see the full-length camel coat that's laying in the back that hasn't been priced yet, somebody will do you a favor and sell it to you for $5.
So did you didn't sell all of it as a set. You parted out.
No.
Were they miniatures or were they like for the yard, like big ones?
They were miniature, but like literally all I can imagine is somebody I almost wonder if a church sold them because literally to have set up a like village style scene with all of them, it would have been 15 by 15 feet. I mean, it was huge. Like one of the pieces that I sold, one of the pieces that I sold for over $200 was probably 12 inches high by 12 inches long by about 12 inches deep. So like the bigger pieces were big, but it was still a miniature set. But yeah, somebody had an extensive collection if it was not owned by an institution. I do not know where you could have set it up.
And so what material was it made of?
So they were all resins, was I think what most, so it was a resin set, and it was Fontanini was who it was by.
I was going to say, was it Jim Shore or what was it?
Yeah, it was Fontanini.
Okay.
Yep. And actually a happy moment was I opened up with what was supposed to be a stable, and inside was the stable and like 2 complete nativity sets by
my gosh, more. I thought you were going to say inside the stable was $1,000. You know,
wouldn't that be great? I'm still waiting for the day. I'm like, I do read about people who find a wad of cash in a pocket of a coat, but I haven't gotten to that experience yet.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that too. Every time I go out, I'm like, am I going to find the wad of cash today? You know, where's it going to be? You know, is it going to be stuffed in one of these teddy bears? You know, one of these 8,000 teddy bears in the plush section. You know,
that's right. Sooner or later, Suzanne.
It's going to show up. Yeah, and you know what? Speaking of Jim Shore, you know what that is, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I found one yesterday. I knew it was the classic angel with the blue skirt but the head was broken. She had no head, and her head was broken.
So now it's a Halloween piece.
So I was like, oh, you know, because I recognized it was Jim Shore, flipped it over, and it was the Heartwood or something like that.
Yeah.
It's the most famous one, and I'm like, oh, I finally found this. You know, never found one. But she has no head, so I left her behind.
Such a bummer.
Darn it! Yeah,
I don't. Even on eBay, there may not be a market for headless angels. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I know, but you know, it was like, but that just goes to show it's out there. These things are out there, and they're gonna pop up in front of you. You know, you just have no way of knowing. And I've been thrifting with people that, you know, if they don't find something in 5 minutes, they're like, this store sucks, I'm leaving. And I'm like, wait a minute, you haven't looked you haven't looked at everything.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes I'll go 30 minutes in a store without finding anything. And then there's that item that, there's the $100 item. You know, you just have to be persistent and keep hunting.
Yeah, it is not, I mean, I think, and I'm curious how you do this. For my part, when I go into a thrift store, I quick browse. So I'll grab a cart and I'll literally just circle through and see if there's anything that I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to grab that before somebody else does. And then, it is the slow crawl. Like, it is not fast after that. There are those things that you'll see instantly and you'll get lucky and, you know, 5 minutes in there and you're walking out with $100 item. But that's not most of the time. Like, most of the time it is, you go up to a rack and you flip through 100 Target pieces to get to that vintage cashmere sweater that you want to buy. Like, that's what it is.
I love it when people put things back right in front of me.
Yeah.
This guy yesterday, he had a Ravensburger Jaws, like the movie Jaws puzzle.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, how did I not see that? And he was on the phone with his wife and he's like, yeah, I don't know about this. And I was like, put it back.
Yeah. You don't want that. That looks like a hard puzzle. There's probably pieces missing.
Yeah. I was like, but that was unique. You know, it was Ravensburger and it was
a movie puzzle.
I never seen that before. I was like, how did I miss that? But yeah, I do the same thing as you. It's called skimming. I just skim through, like, look at what's on top real quick and see if there's anything super obvious. Cause, you know, people do that all the time. They might have that IKEA vase in their cart.
Yeah.
And they decide they don't want it and they just stick it on top of the, you know, men's socks. You know, they just stick it somewhere and, you know, there it is. Thank you for putting that there for me.
Yeah. You know, it's funny you said that about that guy putting that puzzle back. I had one of my favorite things that I ever found. I don't know if I'm curious. I'd love to hear what your favorite thing you've ever found is. And this wasn't my favorite because it was the most money. It was just like the weirdest, most amazing thing I ever found. And this is probably just because I'm, you know, an 80s and 90s kid, but I was watching this little boy chase his sister around with a purple crocodile Goosebumps stapler. And he was chasing her around, like acting like he was going to chomp her with it. And I was like, oh my gosh, people my age would go crazy for that. Some 35-year-old who's in some big wig office is going to want to put that on his desk as a conversation piece. And I watched for like 10 minutes. And I was like, oh, please put that down. Please do not choose to buy that. Please put that stapler down. And he finally did. And man, I snatched that thing up so fast. And I sold it like overnight for, I think, 70 or 80 bucks. And it had been listed for like $1. But it's just that sort of weird stuff that you just, it ends up in the world and you get to snatch it up.
Yeah, I mean, and there you are chasing kids around Goodwill or wherever. I think it's a tie between the autograph book I sold for $1,000 and the alligator sterling silver belt buckle.
Oh, wow. I never saw that one. I saw your autograph book.
I found at a Goodwill that it was on the sale color. It had been there for 4 or 5 weeks. And it was a Jeff Deegan, who is an artisan of silver. And I didn't even realize what it was till I got it home. It was attached to an ostrich belt. And the ostrich belt was 52 inches long. So it was a big size.
Wow.
And so I got it home and I'm like, I should probably take this apart and sell these parts separately. And I got to clean in the belt buckle and there's the 925 silver. 925. And I'm like,
gosh,
wait a minute, what is this? And so I looked it up and they sell for over $1,000 new.
Oh my!
Because it's all handcrafted and it was an alligator clasp. It was like two alligators that hooked together. And the detail was amazing. And I sold that for, I think, $375.
That is
but
amazing.
It took almost a year to sell. So
and that's what you got to wait.
Yeah, it was definitely for a specific buyer. But then the belt itself sold for $75. So
wow.
And so this was a item that was $2.99. It was half price, so $1.50.
Oh my gosh.
So I love that because other people passed over it. I mean, how was it still there after that long? It was a sale color, and I was in there on a Saturday, and it was just like it was all way behind the belts. It was at the very back of the rack. So I love what I paid for it. I love that I parted it out and sold it to 2 different people. And then the surprise of what it was when I got it home, it was like,
that is amazing.
How did this happen that nobody else saw this?
I know. And that's what it's actually funny. One of my other favorite sales was actually in the Habitat for Humanity restore that we have here in town. I found 4 rolls of hand printed wallpaper that had been made in England. And it was black and it had these tropical fish on it. It was really, really vibrant. But the rolls were $4 a piece. So I think I had $16 in a lot. And I sold all 4 rolls together to a interior designer in Texas for like $500.
Wow.
Yeah. But again, it's just, it's that sort of thing where I would never look in a tub. Normally, before, I would never have looked at a tub of wallpaper and been like, there's probably $500 sitting in there. And but after seeing everybody's sales, I now look at a tub of wallpaper differently because I know that there are just those things that you would normally have passed over.
Yeah, and the borders are good. I've sold wallpaper borders and I still have some left, but they're usually super cheap, like 10 cents. And, it's exactly what somebody is looking for, whether, it was vintage and they wanted the same thing, or they're, changing something and they need it to match, or taking down the old and putting up new, or, water damage and like half the wall, you got to redo it. So
your kid chose to peel it up for a little bit.
Yeah. So, and it's so easy to ship and it's not going to expire. And, I've sold actually, full size wallpaper too. That can get heavy. Let's see.
It's harder to ship.
I found 14 rolls of something couple of years ago, and somebody bought all of them, and I was like, oh,
Wow.
this is heavy. But
Yeah.
I think I paid $1 for each roll, and he paid 25 for each roll. So that was a really good
worth
sale.
it.
It's like, and he never left feedback. I'm like, oh, I just want to hear that you got there okay.
I want to know it was good.
Yeah. Like he was happy, but don't go poking a stick into a beehive. Just leave it alone.
Yep, that's right. If he decided he didn't like it, but he's not going to ask any questions, I'm not going to.
Yeah, just no news is good news.
Yep.
So,
have you ever sold anything to any prop departments? Those have been some of my other most fun sales.
I have had things go to like Universal Studios and stuff like that. One interesting sale I had was when I was doing some retail arbitrage, and it was a flavor of for K-Cups. It was Dunkin' Donuts or some flavor that I got at Big Lots. And I had like 4 boxes of them, and it went to CBS News in New York, like for their break room or something, like, oh,
so one of their anchors is particular.
I'm providing coffee for the anchors at CBS News.
That's so fun. Yeah. I sold this really rad purple sweater that had it had sequin on each of the shoulders, and it had tassels. And I sold that to the set of the Goldbergs. So I've been looking for
that. Good
I've
for
been
you.
looking for it.
When did that happen? How long ago?
So it was about 5 months ago. So it would have made sense that if they were buying it for that season, the episodes wouldn't have aired. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm hoping my sweater is famous. I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, keep us posted if it is.
I will.
Somebody else just said that.
Yes.
I can't remember. I'm thinking it might have been Jenny Baum.
I think you're right. And it was a black. I mean, that was magnificent.
Yeah, it was black with gold sequins. And I saw one kind of like that a few days after I saw that post, but that one wasn't going for very much. So maybe it wasn't loud and obnoxious enough.
That's the funny thing about 80s is that's my experience. Is it's like if it doesn't kind of instantly repulse you a little, it's not worth buying.
Well, I was in high school in the 80s from 79 to 84. And I was more of a preppy dresser.
Yeah.
But yeah, we definitely had those crazy sweaters with the big shoulder pads. And it was funny. I was in Goodwill a couple of weeks ago, and let's see, today is October 9th. And there were these teenagers in there trying to find clothing to make a costume of, I'm from the 80s. Yeah. And they just had all these things that didn't match, like plaid pants and this crazy shirt. And they're like, and this looks great. Yeah, this will work. And I could not help myself. I was like, guys,
no.
FYI, the 80s was not the decade where nothing matched. There's different groups like the Breakfast Club. There really is different groups of kids. So you just need to pick what you're doing. That's completely wrong. You are doing your costume wrong.
Oh, that's amazing. That is so
I was like, here, let me help you. Let's find a sequin sweater and some black stirrup pants.
Yes.
And you can, get a wig and tease your hair up really high.
That's right. Hairspray is your friend.
Yeah. So that's funny.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So what was your all-time highest dollar sale? Do you remember?
Oh, gosh. Honestly, it probably was that wallpaper lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably in the five-ish hundred category. That would have been a good thing to have looked up. It's funny.
No, that's okay. Some people just know.
I sold things.
Some people just know off the top of their head, like, oh yeah, that. But
I have no 1,000 pluses, so I think that would be easy to remember. So I'm still waiting for the day. Still keeping an eye out.
You'll get it. And I say this all the time, but it's not where you go, it's what you know, because
it's so true.
You're in not really a rural area, but it's not a big city.
No, it's not. Yeah.
And just all these things that are in people's homes right now that have just been sitting in that closet for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually they're going to show up at the Goodwill or show up at a estate sale. And it's like everything is just sort of hidden and squirreled away. And it's just coming out, a little bit at a time. I found a vintage Igloo cooler the other day, like a little lunch.
Hey, yeah.
And it's actually, I think it's called a Lunchmate. And I flipped it over, made in USA. So yeah, it's old.
Yep, it's old.
And, I looked it up and it sells for $35 maybe, but it was on the half price day, $1.50. And I'm like, other people have seen this because it's been here. And like, so not everybody that gets there ahead of you is looking for what you're looking for.
Oh yeah.
Or knows what
so
you know.
Specialized.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually, the other day, one of the weird things that I found several times is pieces by, I'm trying to remember. I want to even say honestly that the maker is like Mr. Coffee or Hamilton Beach or something, which is not a big brand.
Right.
But they had a designer collection that they did with a guy who does sort of mid-century modern stuff named Michael Graves.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So I have found one of his coffee grinders before, and I had recently just found his coffee pot, which sells for like $100 or something like that. But the carafe is really weird. And I actually went into a Goodwill and I just found that carafe, which will sell for like $50, but like it has no markings on it. Like you have to know what you're looking for. Like straight away, I was like, that is the Mr. Coffee, Michael Graves carafe, because just over time you learned, and it's something that no one would pass by and be like, oh, that's big money, which honestly $50 isn't, but for something you can buy for $2, it's a pretty good return on your money. And it's just so much about like slowly building the knowledge, because I have people who, like, I'll mention in passing, people who know what I do this every once in a while. They say, hey, can I look through your sold stuff? Like, can you show me what you sold in the last month? And they'll say like, oh, I could never do that.
Yes.
I'm like, well, in 5 years you could. You just take the time. You just learn slowly over time, and you make mistakes, and you put together the knowledge. Anybody, if you're willing to just say, it's not a get rich quick scheme. It's a make money slow scheme, and you get better and better at it. So you get more efficient.
What's funny is I'm laughing because yesterday when I was in Goodwill for 4 hours, I was right next to this lady who was talking on her phone, and she was probably in her 60s, and she was just in there shopping for herself. And she's like, yeah, I keep seeing stuff with tags on it. And you remember Marcia, my neighbor, she does this thing where she comes to the thrift store and she buys stuff and then she sells it on the internet somehow. And like, she was completely clueless. She was like, maybe I should get this for her to sell, but I don't even know if she does that anymore. And I don't even understand how it works. I could never do anything like that. There's so many people that are just completely clueless. They have never heard of this. I had to like keep from laughing because I was like, that's been my life for almost 18 years now, every single day. How could you have not heard of this?
Well, and I'm not
they're intimidated.
Yeah,
they're intimidated. They don't do technology. They don't want to figure it out. They don't want to wait for the money. As many eBay sellers as there are that are in these groups and that we know, on social media and all that, there's 100 times that many people that are never going to do it. It's just it's too intimidating.
Oh yeah. And what's really interesting is I feel like as people become more concerned about like the ecological effects of fast fashion and stuff like that, what we do, I think will actually, like, I think there's going to be more demand for secondhand stuff, because that's kind of the direction things are going. So it is such a good time to have already acquired those skills and that knowledge, because I think that there's going to be even myself, I've been like, I don't really know why would I buy a sweater like this brand new at a store when I can just wait
Well,
and
and you
buy
know
it
what's
secondhand?
interesting? Vintage Gap. People want that. It's more well made. Anything
Uh-huh.
vintage LL Bean,
Oh yeah.
clothing,
Yeah, I saw a lot of
backpacks,
vintage
any
LLB.
kind of home good like that that's vintage, made in Hong Kong or
Yep.
Taiwan or not China,
Yep.
USA. It's more durable, and people know that.
Mm-hmm.
If you pay for some actually good Levi's or even Gap or
Yep.
LL Bean jeans, that they're going to last. And I think
Yeah,
that's
even
where
secondhand.
that's where we're at. They're wanting to pay, especially people that work outside or they're hard on their clothes. It's like it makes more sense to buy it pre-owned and even defective
Yeah.
than to buy something new that is just going to wear out so fast.
Oh yeah. It's really interesting. It really is.
So, what year were you born?
87. So
87.
I'm mid
Okay.
30s. Yeah.
My daughter was born in 94, and she told
Okay. Yep.
me that the t-shirts like Barney and Rugrats and
Oh
Backyardigans
yeah.
and all those are a thing now. And anyway, it's in my pile of stuff over here. I found a Rugrats t-shirt yesterday, like
That
made in
is.
Mexico. So it's not a new one,
Oh yeah.
and it's black and it looks a little faded. And she just told me that earlier that day. It's just these things that just pop up.
You would have passed
As soon
by.
as you learn it, I wouldn't have ever thought. I think it was on the Money Making Monday. Somebody sold a Barney t-shirt. Like it was an adult size Barney
Yep.
t-shirt for over $100, made back in the early 90s. And, who ever thought Barney would be revived?
Well, it is so interesting. It's kind of about like, it's that nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
The people who have disposable income now,
Mm-hmm.
what were they really into when they were 11? What was the thing they couldn't buy for themselves? I think that way about like those, like the vintage girl circle skirt dresses. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've sold, like I think I've found 3 or 4 over various times that have sold for over $100. Like I found one the other day, and that's what I wore. That's what I would wear to church every day. Was like
Mm-hmm.
those circle skirts,
The super
and yeah,
frilly, like they're
yep,
almost pageant dresses.
lace collars. That's exactly what they are. Yeah, those little pageant dresses. And yeah, it's a thing that 30-year-olds, they want to have a dress for their kid like the dress that they wore. And so yeah, it is really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, anything can be revived, and all of a
Uh-huh.
sudden, all it takes is a celebrity wearing it.
Yep.
And it doesn't have to be like a brand new thing that's just come out. Reese Witherspoon is now wearing this jacket, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, then it becomes valuable. Okay, well, wow, you are just a wealth of information. Do you have any last words for sellers who might be feeling discouraged or are just getting into eBay?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think for people who are discouraged, I think the reality is that we all need to remember that Q4 is coming. Like, here it comes. I know that the last 10 days or so were pretty slow for me, and then like over the last 2 days, I had like 5 items sell.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it is timing, and I think that there's a lot going on in the world that kind of has some people uncertain, but this too in time shall pass.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where just consistency, buy right, list well, and then just give it time. For people who are just starting, I think the thing that is so encouraging to just remember is, like for me, I started this business with $200 from a tax return, and I have literally never invested any more money beyond the money that money made in my business ever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and like I made $8,000 last year off of a seed investment 10 years ago of $200 that had just kept self-perpetuating.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that anybody can do. And the only limitation is how much effort you are willing to put in on educating yourself. And so the only resource you need is a tiny bit of money and time and intentionality.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that should encourage anybody, because I think a lot of us have at various times in our lives looked at ourselves and felt like we didn't have the resource that quote unquote mattered, which was money. And the great thing about this business is that you can turn $1 into $50 really easy with some education. And with the internet, education is basically free. Groups like your group, Suzanne, like every Monday, there's things that come up that I think, my gosh, I have seen one of those. I have passed by that thing before. And that is free. And that's like, that information is free. And that, I think, is what should just encourage anybody, is that it doesn't take a lot of money. And so just like muster your courage and your mind and go out and see what you can make of the thing. So I think that's what I would say to people who are nervous about getting in, is that you also have something to lose from not doing it. And I think that's what we forget, is that we say like, oh, I'm afraid to do that because what if I get a return? What if it breaks on the way? Well, what if you don't do it and you could have made $8,000 this year that would have helped you and your family and your community? That's also a loss. And I think that should give us courage.
It's all about free will. You can do it or not. And you're just saying, just decide you're going to do it and don't look back. Things are going to happen. You're going to have bumps in the road, but they're not roadblocks. It's just a speed bump, and you just keep going. Everybody gets them.
Yeah, I think just go out and do it. Like there's so much opportunity. And to not take advantage of it is just a sad thing.
And there's enough for everyone, because
absolutely,
like we said, these things we talked about, people left those there. People saw those things and just left them. They didn't buy them. So every single time I go thrifting, I find things that have been there, because our Goodwill puts dates on the tags. I don't know if they're all doing that.
Oh, wow. Ours doesn't date
you can
them, but
see
you know by
like
the category.
When, like this, you can see the date.
Oh yeah.
Ours
is not that fancy.
So you can see when it was put out. I do like the things that have just been put out.
Yes. Yeah.
But then you'll find something that's been there for 3 or 4 weeks and you're like, wow, other people have had to have seen this and they left it here. There's so much abundance everywhere. And, there's enough for everybody. And, I do hear that sometimes. Well, there's so many resellers in my area, I'm not going to find anything. Well, then you just need to learn more about what's in front of you.
There's so many resellers. Well, they're not all the resellers doing the thing that you do. They're not in there at the same time that you are. They're not there when that rack got pushed out. Like, that's just, anything.
It's impossible to be in
everywhere at once.
Everywhere you would go at one time. And like right now, all these stores I go to, the stuff's getting put out and it's going to be there. There's people looking at it, but there's always going to be stuff for me. Well, I'm going to let you wrap up. And are you going out treasure hunting today?
That is the plan. I'm gonna get fully dressed out of my pajamas.
We are recording on a Saturday morning, and so you have lots of treasures to go find. So thanks again for taking the time to come on and sharing everything with us. It was fun talking to you.
Oh, it was a blast. Thank you for having me, and happy hunting, everybody.
Yeah, I'll see you on Facebook.
Sounds good. Thanks, Suzanne.
And there you have it, another eBay seller success story. Just a side note, I have quite a few more of these seller chats lined up. I don't really like to call them interviews because we're just talking about stuff and it's fun. So this is rolling along and snowballing, and there are quite a few more of these to come. Thanks again for spending this time on my podcast. I really appreciate you. And if you need to contact me for any reason, have any questions or suggestions, all of that information is below the podcast. And I do love hearing from you. So thanks again, and we will talk to you next week. Have a profitable, productive, and fun day on eBay. Bye.